So there we go. We see that jank within the timeline view. And if we look through all the things that are getting built out here, we see we have the layout, we have the build, then we have this thing called expensive widget. Now this looks like it could be something. Now if we zoom in, expensive widget has a stack. And if we zoom in more, you just see a bunch of text here. So this, we could try to search for something maybe called expensive widget within our application. We do a search for expensive widget, and we see something that pops up. Here, we're actually returning the expensive widget if we get into index number 20. Okay, if you look closely here, you can see 20 is a little bit bolded. Now, what is this expensive widget? We see instead of just printing one index, we're actually looping through 1,000 times and then printing this index 20 over on top of each other. So 1,000 times this index 20 is printed one on top of another. Of course, that's going to create some sort of performance issues in our application. Now, this is, of course, a simple example, but if you were having performance issues within your app or some jank issues, this is the right tool to go track them down. So that's performance. We have the widget inspector. Now let's go over to the last screen. So for this one, you'll see we're tracking everything up there. As we start scrolling, oh, that looks like it's having a lot of issues. So let's open up another tool called the CPU Profiler. Again, we have this problem about the debug mode. So turn that off, and then we need to record it to get some information about what's going on. So let's record that and then see what type of information we get. Process all those samples, and we get something called a bottom-up chart. Now, there's different ways for you to look into this. There's this CPU flame tree, which you can go down the list and try to figure out what's wrong here. And you'll see we have some orange here, which probably the thing that's wrong, so Fibonacci. You have the call tree where you can go through. You see this takes up 95% of our CPU. You can go down this call tree and try to find something. See 90%, 90%, 90. You can keep going down this, but eventually you should find something that says Fibonacci. And there it is. You finally, after a lot of scrolling, I wouldn't recommend this method, but you got Fibonacci over there. Actually, it's Fibonacci within Fibonacci, so there's a lot of Fibonacci's going out. But I would recommend this bottom up chart because it shows you what is taking the most CPU. And of course, again, it's the Fibonacci. So if we go to our code, we can search for Fibonacci. Or since I actually know what the problem here is, we can just go to the performance screen and we'll see we're returning this function Fibonacci for a value of 30 for every single one of these. Now, if you don't know, this is a recursive algorithm that is very computer intensive, and especially for doing it 30 times. So to solve this, maybe we would want to have a different thing getting calculated. Maybe want to use some sort of different method, or maybe want to pre-calculate it before we go to this screen, because we're just printing the result a bunch of times, which doesn't really make sense. And there's some other tools, so let's just quickly cover them. But those are the main ones that I have used most often. So if we look at DevTools, there is a network page which tells you what kind of requests have been going out to the network. Since this app doesn't communicate with the network, we don't really have to worry about that. But normally you see anything going out over the internet. Then you have the memory page. So if something's taking up a lot of memory, you can look here. You'll see what is the total size, how much memory it's taken up, and why. You could actually take a snapshot of all the memory. And our app crashed there probably because we were doing a little too many things at once. But you can check all the memory related stuff in here. If you're having memory issues, if your app is taking up too much memory, you can figure out what you can remove from there. And the last tool is a logging tool. That one just shows you all the logs that Flutter is putting out. You see most of them are from Flutter Framework. And if we do stuff, you'll see there's going to be more and more logs popping out. And we can even search through all the logs. You can check this. You find one of one for are we having a good time? This log popped out, and we can kind of try to figure out what's going on with our application using those logs. Now that's just kind of an alternative to doing print statements, maybe a more organized way of doing them. So that's how you use DevTools within Flutter.